Today I'm speaking with Jay Tuck. Jay is a U.S. defense expert. He's an investigative journalist and a sought-after authority on AI's implications for modern warfare and global security. His research at U.S. drone base, the Pentagon, and AI institutions are the foundations for his acclaimed book, Evolution Without Us: Will AI Kill Us? He has security clearances in 8 countries, which I think is 2 more than James Bond. And today we're going to be discussing the advancements and ethical considerations of AI technology. Jay, welcome. Excited to talk to you today.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right. So AI, right? There's a bright side and a dark side. Like, how do you think of it?
As I mentioned to you in our previous conversation, I think you have to be a good schizophrenic if you're really an expert on AI. I can talk for hours and hours about the threat and the dangers that we are confronted with AI. There are many, many people, experts, brilliant minds, who think it could possibly lead to the end of humanity. And at the same time, I could talk for hours and hours to the positive aspects of AI. For example, in medicine, where artificial intelligence is saving millions of lives.
And so, are you a pretty good schizophrenic about it? Do you go back and forth yourself and say, you know, it's a positive, it's a wonderful, and it's a negative and it's dangerous? Is that like your normal day?
Well, normally people will book me for one subject, and often I have offered. For example, we had an event at the King of Jordan on the Dead Sea, and I offered them the medical side, saving millions of lives, and I offered them the military aspects, which are very dangerous. They all decide for the military. They think that's much more interesting, and I'm often more often booked for that. I do a lot of keynote speaking around.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, it kind of occurs to me, I'm actually interested in your thoughts on this, is that this is happening. There's no, it's not like this is imaginary or something, and it's definitely not going away anytime soon, from what I can tell. And most people seem to not be educated about what this is. Even the people that are using it regularly don't really have a conception of what we're dealing with here and how fast it's evolving. And so kind of where I've landed is everyone needs to learn it, use it, understand it. This way, in the future, if we have hard decisions to make, at least we're making decisions as an educated species rather than, thinking of it as not what it is. So what are your thoughts there?
I think you put it, you hit it on the head. That's exactly what it's about. All of my talks, all of my books, all of the articles that I write on AI are all about the here and now.
Hmm.
I'm not a startup company who has these charts about what the future is going to be like and day after tomorrow and in 10 minutes, and it's going so fast. I concentrate on the things that are already in our lives and or controlling parts of our lives. And I think that's there are a lot of different ways we can use it. It's a very commercial aspect. People who write software and have a software box in the shelf somewhere, they often put an AI sticker on it because it sells software. And there are a lot of people who are writing articles about it, or philosophers who show up at these events who talk about it and know really very little or nothing about it. So I think your basis is a very good place to start.
All right, we're in the zone at least, huh? Let me ask you this. What is it, right? What is AI from the perspective of Jay Tuck? Like, how do you hold it in your mind? How do you represent it? What do you think of it as?
The definition is very simple. It's one sentence. It's software that writes itself.
Mm,
Normally, we think of software, some software guy is sitting at the keyboard and he's typing stuff into it, and he's telling him when this happens, do that, and when that happens, do this. And AI is not like that. It learns by itself. It's not called programming. It's called training, and it can train best if it has data and tons and tons and tons of data, or big data, as they call it. And then it works out its own pattern recognitions and its own way of solving problems. And that's the unique thing about AI.
hmm Yeah, and I kind of realized at some point, maybe earlier this year, late last year, as I interact with it, I realized, oh, this is a digital mind that we've created here. That's the closest I can get to representing it in a way that I can wrap my head around it. It's like a self-evolving digital mind, or maybe a digital mind emulator, because it can emulate a whole group of digital minds as well.
Well, I think you have to be careful with that because one of the mistakes that is very, very common in dealing with AI is that they compare with a human mind.
Uh-huh.
And AI is something totally different from our human mind.
Totally.
I like to explain it like in a game of chess. As humans, we developed chess as a game to practice as kings, how we're going to win wars. We have the rook here and a horse over there, and we develop strategies. When AI plays chess, they have no strategy. They have no idea what the purpose of the game is or anything. AI just does one thing when it plays chess, and it plays chess better than any human being on earth, is it memorizes. It memorizes all the endless positions on the board and decides each one what to do when this pops up. And that's very different from a human being who's trying to figure out a strategy.
Mm. Looking at it from here and figuring out where we're going, rather than looking at it from another dimension almost and looking at all possibilities at once.
Yeah, or it's simple memorization. I mean, they can an AI can remember and plan with millions and billions and trillions of bits of data that we couldn't even begin to comprehend, and it'll work out solutions with that. And we don't work on that. We, as human beings, we develop strategies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. And so when I think of it as a digital mind or a mind emulator, I'm using those other terms to kind of remind myself that it's not human. It just looks like it's doing something that looks like it could pass kind of as human, but there's a whole other thing going on there. It like lives in a data center and it has all these implications, and we discover things that it can do years after it could already do it, and all of this kind of business, right?
That was very confusing, but very accurate. Yes, that's
Well,
that's
I'm
the
pretty
way I would
confused
put
too.
it. Well, that's the idea. We get confused about it, but yeah, no, that's what it's all about. And basically, it's just pluses and zeros,
Uh-huh.
and it it still is able to work out the smartest way to make a car, or the fastest road between two places,
Hmm.
and can deal with things that we certainly can't as humans. We're limited. Our cognitive possibilities are limited, and the number crunching potential of an AI is not limited.
So, do you have any examples of AI that you find kind of fascinating, but also potentially concerning?
Well, I've done a lot of my research with AI in the military, and of course, it's used. Most people think of drones when they think of the military, because drones are able to chew and digest and evaluate
Hmm.
huge quantities. I'll give you an example. We had a big G10 summit meeting here in Hamburg a few years back, and the German security services, I'm pretty well connected with them. They had no idea that we were all being surveilled from the sky by artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
There's a surveillance drone used in the military. It's called a Reaper, significantly. Um, and if you put an Argus software inside that, Argus is a very popular, it used to be a very top secret NSA software. It is able to look down at the population of a town like Hamburg and observe and identify 50,000 individual people and to analyze what they're doing and where they're going and who looks suspicious and who doesn't look suspicious.
Mm.
One drone, 50,000 people. And there wasn't one drone up there. There were 7 drones up there. I know which air base they started at. And I know a lot of the German BND and Verfassungsschutz, the services here, they were hoping to get a glimpse inside the American technology, inside this Argus technology, and learn about it. But they didn't get to see anything.
Fascinating. Anything that other people are using right now, like ChatGPT or Midjourney or something that you find kind of fascinating, but also concerning?
Well, I don't think ChatGPT is concerning. My wife dived into it immediately. I thought it was sort of something stupid, but she managed, for example, when I was looking for people for events where you could hold a talk, and the people who are behind these events, they hide. They hide their names, they hide their emails addresses, they hide their direct dial telephone numbers. And she searched for them with ChatGPT and found them. It was really an amazing tool. But you have to decide what you're trying to do and what it's good for, and then you can use things like GTP. But what concerns me are, well, there's a very simple piece of information. Every day, every minute, every second, we are turning over responsibility for our society at many different levels.
Hmm.
We're giving up the responsibility to AI. Why? Because AI is damn good at what it's doing, damn good at building the fast car, developing new weapon systems. It can do all of this stuff much better than we can. And the danger is every day we're turning over our responsibility. And then the question is, will we ever get that back? Will, will we ever be Darwin's darling again?
Hmm.
And my fear is once we've taken it out of hand, you'll never get it back
Give me
because
yeah, give me an example, Jay, of a few places where it's taking over what you call responsibility. What does that mean and where?
well, in the military, it means finding and killing enemies.
Hmm.
I'll explain that because that's sort of my home territory. There are laws in the United States of America that the kill decision. I mean, okay, Argus and the drone, the Reaper drone, they pick out good targets and they define them and they follow them and track them. And if necessary, they can kill those targets. But there's a kill decision. There's at one point where you have to make the decision, this person has to go and we're going to kill him. And the kill decision, according to American law, thank goodness, has to be made by a human being. Somewhere in that loop, a human being has to decide.
Hmm.
But it's getting faster and faster and more difficult and more difficult. And the faster you get, the harder it is to put a very slow moving, slow thinking human being into that loop because the machines are faster. But there are many decisions in the way laws are made. Lawyers use AI mostly to look up precedents. They have a new kind of a case, and then they will find the precedents that you normally would be talking about weeks and weeks and weeks of researchers in libraries looking up precedents. And AI can find those precedents and sort through them and which ones are important and make summaries of them. Those are, yeah, shortly before making the decisions, you have the AI filters in our lives and the way you regulate traffic. Are we going to, as human beings, decide the way we're going to regulate urban city traffic?
Hmm.
Are we going to tell them, okay, environment's important, but speed is also important? Those are a lot of very complicated decisions. And you start getting AI moving into those areas, and it's very, very good at what it does, and it's moving very fast. And we always have to remember AI today is making its very, very first baby steps. So wherever it is today, it's going to be much farther on very soon. And
Yes.
that's where it gets out of our control. That's where we have to really, really be careful.
Well, you said, obviously, the thing you said at the beginning is the most kind of concerning and the most, hot button of an issue, which is now you have decisions being made to take the life of another human being.
Right.
And, we have a law in America that says it needs to be a human that makes that decision and not a machine. But even that, I think, I mean, I would be interested to know what percentage of the population believes that another person should be able to even make that decision, because I think there'd be a high percentage that would think, well, it should not be the decisions of a person or a machine. There's probably some much bigger, way of looking at this. But then that would even take longer. And then this introduces even another idea, which is as the um, let's say the technological warrior shows up, as we get these robots and things that can do this, are we going to have the decision made to kill one of those things have to be made by a human, or can the machine do it? And then what happens when they're better than the humans? You see where this goes. Obviously, right now we're into the AI arms race. So where do you stand on this, and what are some of the issues, and how should we be thinking about this?
Well, I don't think the advice of philosophers, I deal a lot with philosophers at events, and they have their own way of looking at the world, which is not necessarily related to the real world.
So wait a minute. So in other words, it's you on stage in an event, and you're there with like a couple of philosophers, and you're discussing the bigger picture of AI and maybe ethics or something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, I won't
Okay.
mention any names, but there are a lot of them on the market there, and they're earning a lot of money talking about this. And since the audience often doesn't know what AI is or how it works, they can get away with it, and that's
Mm,
unfortunate. Um, when you start figuring out who's going to kill who when, there are two major factors that get in the way of reasonable decisions.
yeah.
One of them is you want to win a war. If you're fighting a war, let's say in the Ukraine, and my least last book was about the weapons with AI in that war with Ukraine, and what were the names of the weapon systems and how are they being used and so on against the second largest army in the world. And so if you're using these kinds of weapons, you want to win the war. I mean, you were talking about human life, not just one. You're talking about thousands and thousands of people who are going to win or lose wars. So the moral hesitation to allow the machines to make early decisions is difficult. It's not easy. And the second factor, of course, is money. You can make a lot of money with AI. I'm sure you're aware of this. I hope you're making some yourself. Um, once you have huge sums of money that are being earned, uh, then you tend to turn more over to AI than maybe you should.
Mm. Right. If it's the incentives get aligned, and all of a sudden it's putting money into your pocket,
Yeah.
and giving it responsibility does this, the incentive is going to be give it responsibility. There must be some kind of fable or myth or Bible story that warns. There's probably a whole bunch of them from every culture that warn against doing something like this from thousands of years ago. I want to just touch back in on the philosopher conversation, because this is very interesting to me, because I've
Are you a
interviewed.
philosopher?
Well, yes, but not, not by trade or anything like that. I'm maybe I'm
I got
a
to be careful here.
I'm maybe more of a philosophizer. Maybe that would be a more accurate description of of me.
A good,
You
a
know,
good word.
it's like a self-trained surgeon or something. I'm like something like that. Be careful. But so we're talking about philosophers. I've interviewed philosophers here, and I know philosophers, and they tend to be very good at using generative AI because they're very precise with their language. So my experience is they are amazing at prompting because they've taken apart language and representation. And what you're saying, though, I mean, or it sounds like what you're saying is they're also kind of a little far from reality in your experience anyway. What is the philosopher's argument from your perspective? And then what's your, if you could kind of generalize them, and then what's your kind of response to that, and how do we need to be thinking about
Well, first of all, I talk about AI, how it is today, not what it could be, or what I'm afraid of, or where it's going.
it?
I
Got
don't
it.
have a startup. I'm not making any revenue projections and all of that stuff. Philosophers love to just take the ball and go wherever they have an idea, and that's often wrong, very wrong. Um, Secondly, they introduce ethics into it, and AI is plus and zero. AI has no heart. It has no feelings. You can't insult it. It has no wife they can have a fight with. If you have a jet plane that's up in the air, one of my favorite slides shows an F-16. we know in Ukraine how important F-16s are as fighter jets. And then the second slide shows the same F-16, but instead of a pilot, the Tom Cruise inside the cockpit, it's a machine inside there. And we already have F-16s flying around where the prime pilot is a machine. It's an AI machine, and they can fly airplanes a lot better than we human beings can, because we have very obvious biological limits. We need oxygen. We need to have a pressurized cabin. We need to be free of a marital conflict or other emotions that can distract us, and many, many other things that limit our abilities.
Mm.
And a machine doesn't need any education. You just plug it in and do a little update, and you're in business. And so applying our emotions and our emotional world, our emotional environment, our way of judging and thinking, and that's what philosophers do, is way out of place when you're dealing with these kinds of machines. The decisive question for me in dealing with these machines is what are we going to let them do? And how are we going to keep them out of things they shouldn't be doing? And then you have to identify that. What are the things AI should not be doing?
Okay, quick action step here. So the key is learning how to prompt better. You start out prompting by just asking questions and talking to AI like it's a helper, but you quickly realize that getting better at prompting is a huge accelerator and game changer for your own success in life. So these prompts will not only help you get a lot more done faster and accelerate your success, but they'll also help you really get prompting and get better at it. You can get all of these as a gift from me just by going to metamind.co/gift. That's metamind.co/gift, and I'll put that link below, and then just opt in to get it. I've also created a powerful video for you called AI in the Future of Business and Work and Success that demonstrates some of the key mindsets and prompting strategies to help you get up to speed and get a lot more out of generative AI. And it's also included as a free gift when you register. So just head over to metamind.co/gift to get your AI Accelerator Prompt Pack and the other free goodies. All right, back to our interview. Well, it occurs to me that we've been trying to keep high intelligence out of doing things that we don't want it to do for a long time with humans. And it seems like if someone smart wants to do a thing, they just figure out how to do it. And now we're talking about things that could be 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 times smarter and faster than humans. And so that it does open up some interesting philosophical questions. But I mean, you're talking here about fighter jets, real fighter jets in the air right now with the AI that's smarter and faster than a human that's actually flying the jet a lot of the time, and it does a much better job than a human.
Yeah, it's a different situation. I mean, you won't have an AI F-16, going up into the deep blue and flying circles around the MiGs or something. That's not going to happen. But you can. I know a lot of people who build airplanes, and they're always built around human weakness. Like you can get an airplane to almost make a 90% right turn. This would make pudding out of a pilot if you had a human being in there. They can fly faster and they can fly longer than humans can. They need an ejection seat to get them the hell out of there if there's a problem. And all of these things are not needed if you have AI flying the machine. And that's true of many, many, many things that we do and develop on an everyday basis in our communities, in our lives, where we're turning over the decision making to machines because they're good at it.
That's a very interesting statement that the airplanes are designed around human weakness.
Yeah.
Very well said. It gets the point across. Yeah. And I mean, there must be at this point many, many, many types of aircraft that don't have human pilots that perform much better than the ones with the human pilots. I mean, they must already exist, yes?
Well, if you fly here from Hamburg over to New York, 95% of your flight, you'll be flying with AI,
Right.
autopilot. That's normal. It's more than normal. It's been around for decades, and we don't think a thing about it. but it's getting more and more complex, and the duties that we're turning over them, the decision making that we're turning over to the AIs, is getting larger and larger and larger. And then for us with our little tiny cognitive possibilities, it's getting harder to understand or to estimate or to calculate the risks we're going into.
So, what's happening in the job market, and how does this evolve with the rise of AI and automation? What types of skills are going to be valuable or stay valuable or maybe even get more valuable? What should we be doing and thinking about now and learning?
I'm learning to stay away from that question. That's what I spend a lot of time doing. Everyone likes to talk about the job situation and is an AI going to take away my job? In general, if we look at in the past, when the steam engine came or electricity was invented, we learned that things change. Many people ran out of jobs. The jobs were closed down. The steam engines didn't exist anymore. No one was buying, lamps, gas lamps anymore. But new jobs were created, and the job space was filled with different duties. And that's one certainty that we have dealing with AI. The jobs are not going to go away. They're going to change. And that's just true. It doesn't really matter what you do. I've had to redefine myself as a journalist many, many different times in the course of my career. Who am I, and what is my value added in my job situation? But the new jobs, obviously, we will need people to train AI and to develop AI. We will need social engineers to figure out what place is this going to have in our society. We will need police, AI police, to keep an idea. Like if we have a rule that AI is not allowed in warfare to make life and death decisions, then we have to enforce that, and that's very difficult. So there are a millennium of new jobs that will be created, and I'm fortunate that my kids are old enough to have made their career decisions. Because I would hate to try to give a young person today advice about what they should do and what they should avoid. That's very, very difficult. It's very hard to make predictions about AI.
Yeah, it's a hard one. You're an investigative journalist, which that just sounds cool. And I have to kind of ask you, since you investigate these things, what are the things that are happening on the positive front with AI that most people are not aware of?
Well, if they're happening, a lot of people are aware of them. The big field where the positive things are happening is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just incredible. If you know a lot of our doctors who are working in the high end field of medicine, they really know what kind of a tool that is. I mean, it's used in the diagnostics, for example. I visited the best hospitals in Europe, and the chief radiologists, all of them, were absolutely unanimous that they cannot, as a human being, evaluate a CT or an MRT as well as an AI can, because pattern recognition is one of the great strengths of an AI. It looks at millions and trillions and billions of data, and they will look at an X-ray, and they will see where a cancer cell is beginning to form, and recognize that very early. Or you can take a picture of someone's back, and instead of having a doctor, look for the dangerous anomalies in the tissue, an AI will look at them and recognize them very, very quickly. And this field is expanding like an explosion. It's not like a growth line. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's going straight up. For example, they just discovered with leprosy, very interesting thing. Leprosy has almost been wiped out. It's only left over in a couple of pockets in Africa and elsewhere in the third world. But where it exists, it's very difficult because there aren't very many top high-end doctors there or equipment there. But they've discovered they can examine the back of your eye, the retina, the back of your eyeball, And in the back of your eyeball, in those little tiny cells, there are all the signs of an upcoming leprosy disease.
Hmm.
So what I can do is a doctor in the third world, he takes his iPhone and a little device on it, and he can take a picture of the retina, and he can email it right off to Cambridge or Harvard or somewhere where the best doctors are, and he will get immediately back a description of what if there is disease and how it is to be treated. And that's just one little tiny example in the medicine of all the different things that are being used in diagnostics. And the same is true as treatment. We have all had to do with COVID-19. COVID-19, most people don't know it, was discovered by an AI, little tiny company in Canada. And they were something like 5 months ahead of the World Health Organization in the discovery of AI, and all of the rules that we made about controlling it and keeping an eye on it and where was it escaping our control, that was all monitored by AI.
Mm.
So in the dealing with the disease, it's very important, and most important certainly is the development of new drugs. Normally, if you the process of inventing a new drug and testing it is very complicated and very expensive and
Mm-hmm.
very time consuming. So what you do instead of putting the chemistry together and wait for some kind of cells in a petri glass to grow, what you do is you do a computer model of it. And then bang, you can tell you can do 15 years of experiments on a computer model in a matter of minutes. So they have speeded up the development of new drugs, important in every field of medicine. And all across the entire field of medicine, when the doctors are on the ball and are following these things, you can save lots and lots and lots of lives.
So most people aren't aware that how fast this is going here, and that's so interesting. And what a great example! A doctor in Africa with an iPhone can take a picture, instantly get feedback from one of the top institutions, then do some kind of cure or preventative thing that can fix something that down the road could be devastating, and that's happening across all these different areas. What are
And
some of the
you couldn't do that before. There was no way to do that before. Before
exactly?
you discovered this retina connection, there was no way that you could, you just have to wait until someone really came down with a serious case of this disease. And yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the darker, more negative things that most people are not aware of that are happening with AI?
Well, we're in a surveillance society, so everything we do, I mean, you don't have to type it into ChatGPT. They're watching everything we do,
Uh-huh.
the way we breathe, the way we move our eyes, everything. And all of our telephone conversations are being monitored. I mean, years ago, I wrote in my book that every transatlantic telephone call was being taped,
Yeah.
and everyone thought that was absurd. But of course, now we know every telephone call we make transatlantic, and a lot of the ones we make domestically, they're all being recorded. And worse than that, they're being evaluated, and they're seeing who is this guy, and who he been calling. He's been calling that one woman, and who's she been calling? And it branches out and covers basically your entire environment. If you think for 5 minutes, um, what your phone has. That time for a little anecdote.
Of course.
There was a guy in California. I've forgotten his name, but he was driving down the street in California, and a cop stopped him because a brake light was out. And he started taking a look around the car, and he opens up the hood, and in the hood he finds a sock, old sock. Looks inside the sock, and there's a 38 pistol in there. So he takes the guy out, and he takes him down to the station, and he has his iPhone. And they look through the pictures in his iPhone, and in the pictures in his iPhone, there were a lot of hand gestures, fingers, signs, and stuff. And the cops knew those are or signs that this person is a member of the Bloods, a
Hmm.
killing a killing gang in Los Angeles, and he's belonged to them. And then they checked the gun and discovered it had been used in 2 murders. So it was an easy case for the law. I mean, 1, 2, 3, the guy's in jail for life. Took
Hmm.
him off the street. Um, that's the nice part. But the strange part of the story is this guy has become a hero among people who are worried about police state because he took his convictions all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the Supreme Court of the United States said, wait a minute, that's not a telephone. That's the guy's brain. He's got his whole life in there. He's got all of his pictures and all the people he knows and the addresses that they have and yeah, all of his plans. And if you want to look at that as a policeman, you need to get a search warrant.
Hmm.
And that was the birth of search warrants for iPhones. Suddenly everyone had to get a search warrant. And then the police discovered that someone had an iPhone and they confiscated it. Other members of the Bloods could see the iPhone had been confiscated and they could erase it
Hmm.
because they had the ability in the distance of all of their members. Once their phones were confiscated, they could erase them. No trace, everything gone. So this was a great problem for the police. You know, you have all this evidence on your phone, and then they erase it. Damn it! So he got the police in Los Angeles got what they called Snowden socks, named after Edward Snowden, of course. Those are metal socks, and you put the phone in there, and it cannot be penetrated electronically through waves or anything, and you protect it against foreign interference until you get your search warrant, and then you
Hmm.
take the phone out of the sock and enter it in evidence. And that's all been going on, not just in California, but in many states. And they also, police are using a lot of facial recognition. Well, I could talk about facial recognition for a long time, but one of the things is in San Francisco, for example, they discovered the facial recognition the police was using was defect. It was racist. It worked fine on normal older white guys like me, but if you started using blacks, it made many mistakes. And some of these black guys got thrown in prison innocently. And California has since prohibited the
Hmm.
use of facial recognition by police because it's defect.
Hmm.
It's not working properly. So I could go on about that, but they're making new discoveries in ballistics, for example. You all know that if you shoot a person with a gun, that the projectile has markings from the barrel of the gun, ballistic markings, that can be traced back to the weapon. Everybody knows that. But what you may not know is the same is true of the shells. When you shoot with a pistol and the shells that are fired out and you are lying on the street, they also have markings on them from the hammer of the gun. And they're now that you're using micro electronics and pattern recognition for these little tiny markings, they're able to use that to catch criminals. So the whole world, whether you're a journalist or you're a nurse or you're the board member at Lufthansa, um, your job's changing, and you better pay attention.
Hmm. We talked about ethics before, and I'm interested to hear, do you have any things that we could even call ethical concerns or challenges, or even anything in that ballpark? And I realize you're saying that AI isn't ethical because it's different, but do we humans have any ethical considerations?
Well, we should figure out what we want to have in our society and what we don't want to have, what we want to prohibit and what we want to allow. But this is difficult for many reasons. Number one, it's hard to decide what you're going to allow and what you're going to prohibit. Number two, the decision makers who are sitting in the United States Congress or in Brussels in the European Union, they don't understand much about this. They don't really understand it. So they're not very good at making laws or rules to control the misuse of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to define too. What are you going to prohibit and what? And it's changing so fast because this technology is exploding so fast. So all of that is good. It's very difficult for if you're a bureaucracy in the lawmaking center. And then I get a lot of my hope from looking at nuclear weapons. The people who played a key role in the control of nuclear weapons, those were the nuclear scientists who developed them because they saw the dangers first, because it was their professional field, and they knew how to control it and how to stop it. So the non-proliferation treaties that we developed to stop the spread of nuclear weapons were developed mostly by the engineers who are involved in that. And then the same is true in AI. There are a lot of AI people, very, very smart, and many of them very, very ethical. And they're working out ways to keep the lid on.
Do you think that AI ever wakes up and becomes sentient?
No.
No, huh? Self-aware? Or what about simulated self-awareness, where it's behaving in a way that's indistinguishable from self-awareness or agency from us?
Yeah, that's the decisive difference. I don't think bits and bytes can develop feelings or emotions or guilt or conscience because they're just bits and bytes.
Uh-huh.
But if we try to train them to react in certain ways, emotional ways, people would react, they should be able to simulate that. And there are some tests that I'm trying to think. There's some very famous computer scientist, Turon, who developed tests to see if you would be able to identify in a conversation, is that a person, a human being, or a machine?
Oh, you're talking a Turing test.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The Turing test. And that's the wrong way to approach it. We can't judge AI by pretending it's human and judging it by human behavior because it's not human and it doesn't behave like human beings. Its dangers are not visible like they are with a human being. So we need to develop other criteria that are going to work.
I heard someone, I think about this a lot, and particularly in terms of, speed. I'm fascinated with the dragonfly because it apparently operates at about a 5 times the rate of the human mind. Like we operate at something like 60 frames a second. And I've read that dragonflies are like 300 frames a second. And you see how fast they move and how agile they are. They're really fearsome predators and so forth. And it's like, when you try to go grab a dragonfly out of the air as fast as you can move, to a dragonfly, that looks like you're moving, maybe this fast or something, because it's just going so much faster. And I think about this relative to, the increasing speed of generative AI. And I saw someone a couple of months ago talking about how the biggest problem is going to be the AI being convinced that we're sentient, because we're going to move so slow relative to it that it won't be able to figure out that we're even alive. And the example that they used is some banana trees can actually walk. They pick up their roots and they can move toward a water source. But this is something that happens over years. And you could come back every day and look at it and never realize that it's doing this. You have to use a long-term time lapse to see that this thing's moving. And does this mean that it has some kind of sentience to it that's maybe a different form, but that operates really, really slowly? Some people believe in the Gaia hypothesis, which I find really fascinating, like that the whole Earth is like a superorganism that self-regulates itself, but it may operate on timescales that a human just cannot possibly understand, and we haven't been measuring long enough to be able to see this. And so, if you have a theoretical AI that's moving 100 million times as fast as a human, it would, live out like the entire, period of human evolution in maybe 1 second or something. And so we're moving so slow relative. I don't know. I find these thought experiments to be very interesting because they introduce conundrums that we've never dealt with. And most people don't have we don't have the mental models and the metaphors and the representations and the experiences to even know how to consider them.
Okay, that's very philosophical.
It is. It's very philosophical. Yeah, and I know you love philosophers.
Yeah, I love philosophers, and I mean, the short answer is that those are philosophical efforts to place human characteristics on top of machines.
Hmm.
And you cannot judge an AI by saying, is it in love, or is it afraid of death, or all of these human things that we go by, because it's not relevant for an AI, and it's not relevant for our judgment of an AI. For me, is
Can I say something? Sorry to interrupt here, but just so where I'm going with this, I'm kind of suggesting something. I should have been more explicit. What I'm basically trying to say is this has big implications. What should we do? Should we just press the off switch right now and stop and say, you know what, let's think about this for a while? Should we put fail safes in place? What should we do practically right now as a species, as individuals, as societies?
well, very, very shortly, we should be scared. We should realize the potential of this stuff to take over our lives. Not like Schwarzenegger in Terminator, but like taking control of our laws, taking control of the cars we build, the airplanes, our medical things, taking over many, many, many things that are crucial to human society,
Mm.
and giving the AI the decision-making permissions to do what it thinks it is important to do. The most important thing we can do is also be aware of it, to follow it in the news or in our jobs or with our colleagues or wherever we can, and try to figure out where the heck is this going, and what can I use here? What's going to help me? What's going to help society? Medicine, as I mentioned, is a very easy to understand thing. When you start changing chemical environments, it gets more complicated. When you start regulating what humans can do and cannot do, it gets very, very complex. And the problem is most people are so poorly informed, especially lawmakers are so poorly informed, that they have no idea what's going on or what they should do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very difficult.
Yeah. Jay, thank you so much for coming and talking with me today. I found it philosophically interesting, practically interesting, and just really enjoyed the conversation. We'll put some links to your work down below, and everyone go check out Jay's work. He's written some great books. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
So thank you for watching another Metamind AI interview. Remember to keep practicing prompting, keep learning, get our prompt pack and quick start video, watch our other videos to learn from other AI experts, and stay tuned to us here on Metamind. Stay subscribed because this is going to get really interesting.